This evening we are talking about issues relating to press freedom and the draft constitution, or constitution amendment in Japan. And our main speaker is Dr. Sanae Fujita. So she is an Associate Fellow of the Human Rights Centre at the University of Essex's School of Law. She has an LLM and a PhD in law from the University of Essex. And she has also taught there, and she's also worked with at least one, I think two, of the UN special rapporteurs who have done missions to Japan on things like human rights and press freedom. And our chair for this evening is William Horsley, who was for many years a journalist. He worked for 30 years or so with the BBC and was the bureau chief in Tokyo for 7 years during the 1980s. And he's currently UK chairman of the Association of European Journalists and international director of the Centre for Freedom of the Media at the University of Sheffield. And on that note, I'm going to pass straight over to you, William, to kick us off.
Konbanwa. Thank you very much. It's great to see a full house here, and for a heavyweight theme, we also have a heavyweight audience, I see, with people working for the government and a lot of scholars and historians. So we look forward to an open dialogue this evening. I'm going to chair this, and we want as much dialogue as possible. People have immensely strong feelings about human rights and freedom of expression, and especially the media. All opinions are welcome here. And you may have noted yesterday that Reporters Without Borders issued its annual Press Freedom Index, in which both Japan and the UK featured much lower down than they have in the past, and that's something that Sanae-san is going to pick up. It was a very smart move of the Kidwell Anglo-Japanese Foundation to invite Sanae Fujita here. Her original research and advocacy work is quite formidable and has made an impression on audiences in Europe and especially in Japan. You've got the details of her background at the centre, at the Human Rights Centre at the University of Essex, and her original work was with the Asian Development Bank and issues of human rights, but for the last 5 years she has devoted herself to raising international awareness about global freedom of expression standards and how Japan does or does not fit into them. And as she will explain, she's been, in a sense, the front line of that struggle during visits to Japan. Now she's going to, before she starts, I'd just like to make a couple of introductory remarks to try and put these issues a little bit in context, because some people here may be familiar with, very familiar with Japan and even its media scene, some with the UN system and its nitty-gritty, but not many both. Fujita-san is going to talk about three things. Her main point is the assessment at the United Nations of Japan's record on human rights through the peer review process, the Universal Periodic Review. Every country submits itself every 4 years to criticisms and recommendations from the other member states. The second is issues with media independence in Japan, and the third, the constitutional revision issue, especially as it relates to those previous things. Now, a few signposts here, because she'll be talking about things that some people are not very familiar with, the Geneva UN system and so on. I'd like to start with the thought about the conflict between government passion for secrecy and the press's drive to reveal. You may have seen the new film The Post about the Pentagon Papers, 1971, a prime example of how the US, with the most outstanding constitutional defences for press freedom, came very close to suppressing an immense lie by the government over the Vietnam War, the Pentagon Papers, for many years. And you may recall, if you saw the film, the US Supreme Court Justice who ruled in favour of the Washington Post, the government's power to censor the press was abolished so that the press would remain forever free to censure the government. The press was protected so it could bear the secrets of the government and inform the people. That's one thought. But how fragile that is, we've all seen from what's happening now in America and all across the world. The inhabitant of the White House has declared war on the media. The struggle is starting all over again. Japan, of course, that foundation for press freedom came much later, after the war, effectively. But in a longer history, Japan did exist under a military dictatorship. So it was really quite a new idea before, at the time of Meiji. The reality is that governments make laws. It's also their job to protect them, and the temptation to do it in their own interest, in a partisan way, is often too great, and they succumb to it. And many have observed that, 25 plus years after the end of the Cold War, the triumph of freedom of expression we saw then has faded drastically. And you see countries all over the world where authoritarian leaders, Turkey, Russia, a couple of examples, are using control of the media, control of the information flow to hang on to power in authoritarian ways. The third point I'd like to mention is the media landscape itself, which has been transformed by the internet and the end of 150 years of semi-monopoly of big media, newspapers and TV and radio across the world. The gatekeepers have been pushed aside by the internet giants, social media, and so on. And one unforeseen result of that was a catastrophic loss of trust in the media, as they themselves became less accountable in many countries. But it's taken effect in different ways in different countries. This country still has an extraordinarily vital investigative media. We've seen stories from The Guardian just last week on Windrush, for example, Channel 4 exposing the Facebook Cambridge Analytica thing, but at the same time we have a government which is enacting repressive laws. In Japan, the impact of the media landscape changes is less dramatic, in the sense that loyalty to subscribers to the various newspapers and so on is much stronger, and also the national broadcasting system is more staid. It's less adventurous than in this country, in my opinion. And in particular, the Kisha Club system, which we've talked about more than once in this room in the past, is a kind of cartel system which restricts the plurality of media content in a rather special way. Of course, you compare Japan with China or some of its other neighbours, it's doing very well, but that is a particular feature. And a Asahi Shimbun journalist, I recall, who was with me at this desk a few years ago, defined the objective of his journalism is to get as close as possible to the minds of the people running the country, the LDP leaders, and to tell the audience about that. And it's quite opposite to my idea of journalism, which is that you have a broad mind, you take in as much information from different sides as you can, so that you have the ability to scrutinize and compare and tell the people. And the final point is that as this deterioration has taken place in the landscape of press freedom around the world, the actual the UN system and the regional human rights systems have continued to improve and build on the norms and standards which started 70 years ago with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, exactly 70 years ago, with things like the European Court of Human Rights, with the individual right of application, and the binding nature of that court's judgments. Whereas, and the same is true to some extent in Africa and the Americas, it is not true in Asia. And so, again, Japan's geographic regional situation is very different. It's grown up without that framework which exists in Europe. My last thought is a quote from another UN body, which is the UN Human Rights Committee, the body of respected international lawyers who adjudicate on the main treaty, the Treaty of International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. I spent many years of my journalistic career not knowing about that, and now I understand it is the foundation of the freedoms that we all enjoy, which says quite clearly that freedom of expression and press freedom are particularly important because they give effect to other fundamental rights: right of assembly, right of association, even the right to vote in a free election. And with that, I'll hand over to Sanae Fujita, who will open your minds. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Horsley, and good evening. Thank you for coming. I'm so glad to see so many people showing interest to the human rights in Japan, and then I really appreciate the Daiwa Foundation to have this opportunity for me to talk about this. William already explained quite a lot, so probably easy to follow. I came to England as a student in 1999. I was already a postgraduate student back home studying human rights, and I really wanted to continue and develop my understanding. And at that time, my intention was to support other country which has a more difficulty. I thought that Japan is a good country, democratic country. We are so blessed, so I want to do more international cooperation. That was the intention. And I came to England, and the first thing I was shocked was to see media here. And I never lived outside of Japan before I came, so I was so shocked. What I have been seeing in Japan. So that was, although media is not my specialty, but I got very interested how the media is working here in Japan. Then my supervisor, Essex University, I chose Essex University. Some of you might know Essex has the oldest human rights center in the UK, and one of the oldest human rights center in the world. So it has a lot of reputation in the human rights arena. So I chose there, and I'm so glad to come. And my teacher has been involved in UN activity quite a lot. So he gave me a lot of opportunity for me to attend the human rights meetings in Geneva. So last 17 years, I've been attending quite a lot of UN meetings. And in the beginning, as I said, it was for research. But the last 4 years, I realized I cannot ignore Japan. Because Japan's situation, human rights, is getting worse and worse, which was so shocking to me. So I decided I have to use my specialty to do something for my country. So that's why I'm doing this. And I want to briefly introduce how I have been working and how UN and Japan's reaction in this human rights issue. Then already William explained, my talk is those 3 parts. And first of all, I want to just briefly show the overview of UN. UN mechanism is mainly 2 parts. First is treaty bodies. There are lots of human rights treaties, and Japan, UK is a member of those treaties. And another one is Human Rights Council, which is political institution. And so, first of all, the treaty bodies. William already mentioned that there's a covenant on civil and political rights which guarantees, which mentioned freedom of expression. And the other thing is rights of a child, rights of women, and Japan is also a member of those treaties. And there is a body which monitor how the member countries are implementing. And they are independent experts, like a teacher. My teacher was also the member, and lawyers, and so independent people sitting in the body. And that body, the committee, is assessing the report, the periodic report from government and from civil society, regularly 4 or 5 years, every 4 or 5 years. And the other thing they are doing is receiving complaints from individuals. In this country, if your human rights is violated, you go to the domestic court, and then you lose Supreme Court in a case. Where do you go? You have Strasbourg, right? European Court of Human Rights. Same mechanism is provided by UN. Those treaty body has it. So if your court, if you lose in a domestic court, you can take that case to those UN bodies. However, in order to be able to use that, government have to ratify another treaty, optional protocol of those treaties. Japan hasn't ratified any of those treaties, optional protocol. So we don't have any access to this mechanism. Japan is the only developed country in the world which hasn't ratified any of those. This is a covenant of civil political rights, the individual complaint mechanism, which I just explained. UK hasn't ratified, but you have European Convention of Human Rights. So So you have similar stuff. So, and Japan, of course, Asia doesn't have any regional human rights mechanism, so only we have UN, but Japan doesn't have that much good. So UN has been recommending that again and again and again, Japan, you should ratify that. many times, but they never accept it. So then other body is political one, Human Rights Council. UK and Japan is a council member of this body. 47 members are creating this council. And they appoint special rapporteur, which is another independent expert. And those people are, my professor was also, he was doing that right to health for 6 years. And then one of them is freedom of expression, who I have been working quite a lot, and privacy. And these people, what they do is appointed by UN Human Rights Council. They are independent, and it has been described as a crown jewel of UN human rights mechanism. It's very important role they are doing, and they do official visit and they do research and they give recommendation. And by the way, he is my colleague, Essex University teacher. He is a special rapporteur of right to religion. And the next person is a former director of Article 19. Probably know that London-based NGO. And the middle one is Professor Paul Hunt, who is my professor teacher. He was also right to health special rapporteur. And then look at human rights, Japan in the UN system, human rights mechanism. As I mentioned that, also Japan ratified member of the most of the human rights treaties. None of the optional protocol was ratified yet. So we cannot use this independent individual complaint mechanism. Therefore, special rapporteurs are quite important source of international voice to Japan, because that's very limited. We only have very limited scheme to the UN human rights system. Then I worked with those three people. The first one, Mr. Frank Larue, the former special rapporteur on freedom of expression. And the successor is current freedom of expression special rapporteur, Mr. David Kay. And another one, Joe Kanatachi, who is a privacy special rapporteur. And I explain one by one, but yeah, just evidence, I've been working with them. And my PhD, as William already mentioned, that was about the World Bank and the Asian Development Bank, which is an international development institution, rich institution. And Japan is quite a big donor country, and I thought I should look at those. And then I studied their policy on participation, accountability, and transparency, how they are regulating information disclosure to the affected people. Then I studied International Covenant on Civil Political Rights of Freedom of Expression, Access to Information. And those banks spend quite a lot of time to when they revise those policies, because it's very important. They organize consultation with civil society experts and spend 2 or 3 years and they draft and the public comment. It's quite transparent. So, and I learned what is the international standard with access to information, transparency, freedom of expression. However, 2013, after I just published this book, what happened in Japan was Japanese government was preparing so-called State Secrecy Act, which is under the name of national security, government can hide inconvenient information. And I thought it was so scary because I knew how important information is to secure your human rights. So, but I had no connection with people in Japan. So just wanted to raise awareness. And I translated that bill into English and send it to, first of all, Article 19 of the NGO and Special Rapporteur to Freedom of Expression. I use proper route. Then that's the beginning of my activity. And as you see, people are so against it. But this government never had proper consultation. Everything was behind the closed door. And they just wanted to push through. It took only 6 weeks to go through both upper house and the lower house. So, but anyway, that was the beginning of the activity. And my letter was accepted by Special Rapporteur Frank LaRue very seriously. He found it very dangerous, so he issued official letter while Japanese parliament was still discussing. Then he said, this bill has broad and vague ground for secrecy, and it can cause serious threat to whistleblower and journalists. Then opposition party MP picked up this in the discussion in parliament. And what Mr. Abe said was, well, this UN person is misunderstanding. So that was the end of story. No, they didn't pay attention much. But a few days later, another person from UN Human Rights Institution, Nabi Pillay, High Commissioner for Human Rights, she's the top of the UN Human Rights Council, the institution. She regularly has a press conference in Geneva, and then someone asked about this bill, and she said very strictly, Japanese government should not rush through the law without putting proper safeguard, and the Japanese government should listen to people's concern. And this was kind of out of the blue because it was a press conference. No, there was no caution to the government of Japan. And that made Japanese government so furious. And according to some newspaper, LDP MP was so upset and they were arguing, we should, she should resign, she should apologize, we should stop paying money to the UN Office of High Commissioner of Human Rights. Actually, they stopped it for 1 year as a revenge. So that was a big impact. Although those concern was expressed by UN institution, bill was passed. And it's entered into force and working quite well. But even before this bill was passed through, information disclosure was not great in Japan. This is about Fukushima. Opposition party asked about the Fukushima nuclear plant. And 135 pages was completely black. That was the information from the government. It's not only about Fukushima. For instance, recently, cronyism scandal, Prime Minister's friend had a very great discount of having land, state land to build a school. And of course, people ask the information, but as you see, completely black. So this is the information. It happens quite a lot. So that is my custom we see. Then Mr. David Kay, I really wanted him to come to Japan as an official visit. So he accepted, he chose Japan, and I'm so glad, and that was posted. He was coming in the beginning, December 2015. UN website also posted, Mr. David Kay is going to Japan this day. I was ready to go to attend his mission. However, what happened was, within just less than 3 weeks before that day, Japan canceled it without proper reason. And they just said, well, please come sometime after next autumn. So I nearly got a heart attack when I got a phone call from Geneva. Then there was no reason. They just didn't want him to come. And Article 19 immediately wrote a press release. We are so shocked to hear that. Japan is a democratic country, so what's wrong? Why they are so not willing to accept the expert? So that was, of course, that's very natural reaction. And following that, Wall Street Journal also published it. Abe administration doesn't want to have an expert. So we made a fuss about it. I went back to Japan and talked to a lot of people, even Japanese press, and I think Japan is losing international reputation. So, and then my colleague in Japan also made a lot of effort to negotiate with Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So finally, Japanese government accepted. So he came to Japan 2 years ago, April. So it was good. At least he came. Then I was with him with other colleague, and what happened was, people who doesn't want this kind of international expert started attacking me and other colleagues. Yeah, accidentally I was included in news, TV news, and he circled me, and bashing. Yeah, special rapporteurs are puppet of social justice warrior. So now when you Google my name in Japanese, you can find Sanae Fujita is super left-wing, radical human rights activist, blah, blah, blah. So that kind of things. And not only me, but the people who don't like this kind of UN people started doing this terrible attack. But anyway, his research went very well, and a big press conference was held. And after 1 year, following year, he published the final report. So that is all in the website. And his main point was media's independence of Japan is at risk. And he mentioned, of course, the problem of Kisha Club, as William always mentioned. And the other problem is, of course, State Security Act, and the draft constitution problem. So his report is like this, but of course, government of Japan didn't like his comment and report, and what they said is, Mr. K's report is based on inaccurate information, so they didn't want to accept any recommendation. And not only that, pro-government people, maybe you have heard Nippon Kaigi, Japan Conference. Yes, they are so super nationalist group. They hate current present constitution. They hate the result of the Tokyo trial. So they want to change and they go back to pre-war. And those people, of course, they don't like David case. And some of the people of the group created viewers and listeners for legal compliance in broadcasting, 視聴者の会. And they sent open letter to David K. Mr. K, your findings wrong. You just you just look at your country. Don't worry about Japan. Those kind of thing. And they even prepared chart who is using this external pressure. Sanae Fujita in the middle. Can you see? Yeah. I don't know how to use. Oh, sorry. Where's the pointer? Okay. Yes. Yeah. This is me. Yes, David K. And he's an economist, journalist based in Tokyo. And some people who were sacked because they were outspoken. And in addition to that, some old professors criticized Mr. K's report, saying his report is unfair and a biased view. So they didn't like it, so they also sent letter. So apparently Mr. K's report and this has a big impact in many sense. And another thing is just after his mission, we discovered cabinet, prime minister's office created prepared spy group. And the intelligence team and they followed Mr. K and the individuals who were supporting his mission. And among those individuals, I was also included. Of course, UN was very upset. So that is something which is happening in Japan. So it might be different from your impression, Japan's peace, democratic country, but what they are doing is quite something, isn't it? Okay, so let's move to the other special rapporteur. This time of last year, I had to work on this another horrible law, anti-conspiracy bill. In the process, in the amendment of criminal law, government wanted to add 277 new criminal charge under the name of conspiracy. Then I had to translate into English again, and I had the chance to meet the the Special Rapporteur of Privacy, Mr. Kanatachi, and he was shocked to see that. So he immediately reacted and prepared letter to Prime Minister Abe, and that was sent to him, and it became big news. It was reported in many news. And honestly, I didn't expect it's gonna be so big news. So, and I thought I should be very quiet for a while. So what he said is, this conspiracy bill has very ambiguous and arbitrary some words are very ambiguous and it can be easily abused. Then there's no proper mechanism for protection privacy, and the public discussion, the process of the drafting, as usual, was not open. No experts are included. So it's same as State Secrecy Act. So he sent this letter to Prime Minister. Then, of course, government was so upset, and immediately, I heard within 3 hours, government prepared a letter to protest against Professor Kanatachi. And Mr. Kanatachi said, well, government's letter has just angry words, but no substance. And it's very embarrassing for Japanese people as well. Some people very so embarrassed. And some people wrote an email to Mr. Kanatachi, I'm sorry, our government is terrible. So he said he got 200 emails from Japanese people to apologize the reaction of Japanese government. But anyway, this dialogue between government and Mr. Kanatachi was quite interesting. So foreign media, Reuters, New York Times, and this place, foreign media also published it. Then what government of Japan started doing after this event was to give impression that, well, we don't have to listen to Special Rapporteur. They are not important. What happened was just a few days after his open letter, the letter to Prime Minister, all newspapers except Asahi published this article. Prime Minister had a chance to see Secretary General of United Nations, Guterres, and apparently they had a chat, Mr. Guterres, and this article is probably based on the information from Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and the Japanese media didn't check and just published. And what they said is, well, Mr. Guterres said, well, special rapporteurs are independent experts, they are separate from United Nations, do not necessarily reflect the opinion of the UN. So do not reflect of the United Nations. So that is something they wanted to give impression. So they're just independent, individual people. They're just saying what they were talking about. They want to talk about. And I was wondering, did really Special Secretary General said this? So I immediately contacted the UN. Is this what he said? Then, interestingly, following the different version of this event was published from United Nations. This is a press release of Geneva, New York, and it says, Secretary General said to Prime Minister Abe that special rapporteurs are experts that are independent and report directly to Human Rights Council. Full stop. Do you see the difference? Yeah? He didn't say anything about why the special rapporteur are representing UN or blah, blah, blah. He just said, yeah, they are experts reporting to Human Rights Council. That's it. So maybe contents are same, but the giving impression, this is what UN said. So you see that how government is trying to do, and following this, funny thing was, year before of this event, interestingly, government of Japan wanted to be a member of Human Rights Council. They changed 3 years, the election of the member of council. So Japan was one of the candidate. And in that process, they were doing campaign. We respect human and special rapporteur, and this is the manifest the government was published in the website and everywhere, and it says Japan will continue to offer the full cooperation to realize meaningful and constructive dialogue with thematic mandate holder means special rapporteur, including Mr. Kanatachi and Mr. David Kay. This is what they said 2016, and in addition, they gave prize to one of the special rapporteur looking at North Korea. Why? We are not good friends, right? Well, individually we are good friends, but maybe the government and North Korea, Korea and Japan has a very complicated relationship. And a long time ago, North Korea came to Japan, abducted some people from Japan. So Mr. Abe used this issue politically when he need. So Japanese government gave honor to the special rapporteur who was looking at North Korea because they think he contributed a lot to solve the problem of the abduction, which wasn't solved, but the Japanese government liked what he was doing. And however, he is colleague of Special Rapporteur of Freedom of Expression, privacy, same category, right? Special Rapporteur. But following year, this government, like cabinet decision, they do quite a lot. And one of them was, they said, view of Special Rapporteur is expressed based on individual status and not representing the UN Human Rights Council. This is what Japanese governments believe. This is what they adopted as a cabinet decision. So, as you see, the manifest of 2016, we will support Special Rapporteur, and this cabinet decision is not consistent. It's easy to see that. So I had a chance to ask, what's the relationship of those? In a conference where top of the human rights section, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, come and give presentation. And the audience can write question to him, and I was expecting, I asked question for those relationship, what do you think about this? And he had enough time, but he skipped my question. He didn't answer. And the coordinator saw all the question, and she said there was another professor who was asking exactly the same question. So two people asked same question, but he just skipped the question, didn't want to answer. Okay, so, but anyway, that is a quick, so then the economists show this, why Japanese government is so, react so emotionally. That normally government don't really react in that emotionally, but so this was interesting article. Yeah, economist was speaking up. Okay, the second part, quickly, media independence of Japan. I'm not media expert, but since I've been really interested, I was looking at this issue. And as William said yesterday, as a report of Without Border published the latest Press Freedom Index. This is of course not perfect, but at least you can see some tendency. 2011, 2010, Japan was not bad, ranking 11 and 22. And after that, going so bad. Last year, ranking 72. So last 5 years, we lost maybe 50 ranking. And the latest one, also 67, but score is going down. Because the ranking is like a relative thing. Because other country goes down, your rankings go up. So you really have to see both. And then the reasoning of this lower score is it explained that there's lots of harassment for the journalists who talk about Fukushima or Okinawa, which is very sensitive issue. It very makes sense. Lots of things are introduced. So this ranking, whose fault? It's clear. Yes, our Prime Minister Abe, he was Prime Minister a few years ago, so he is not he's not doing a good job. And 3 years ago, Economist showed a very interesting article. Yes, Prime Minister was sitting, some journalists, and if you look very closely, from this lady, the microphone, in the microphone it says NHK. Do you know what NHK means? Which is a public broadcasting media of Japan, like a BBC, not same as BBC, but. So this article was saying, well, NHK is not doing public watchdog at all now. Because those days, the head of NHK was close friend of Prime Minister Abe. And he was saying officially that, well, NHK is like a mouthpiece of government. We cannot say opposite thing from government. So, and these things happen one after another. For instance, just before Mr. David Kaye was coming, Communication Minister said, government can shut down broadcaster which government feel are biased. So of course this is a very big chilling effect to the media. She was quoting a Broadcasting Act, Article 4. Of course, it won't happen, maybe not, I hope not, but it might happen. That is always chilling effect to the media. So since then, and just after that, those three famous sort of outspoken commentator, Japanese level, outspoken. It's nothing from UK point of view, but in Japanese level, they are very open. And the government didn't like them. So there are lots of some story that they got pressure indirectly. So they had to resign his position one after another. And another probably example pressure is 2014 when Prime Minister Abe decided to have an election, dissolve the cabinet and the parliament, and they had an election. And for the first time, LDP sent official letter to all the TV company asking, please do fair report of election. And then, of course, if it happened in this country, who cares, right? Maybe media got upset and attacked the government and maybe the top story and but the Japanese media just followed it. Yeah, it worked quite well. They didn't want to have any crash or argument with cabinet, so they just avoid and not talk about government election, and the total time of report reduced to 2/3. And this letter is still working. After 2040, we had another national election, and that time, reporting time reduced again. So then what happened is, people don't think much about election. So voting rate go down, and who is happy when people don't go to voting? Of course, big party like LDP, because they have very strong systematic voters. So then last 2 or 3 national elections, LDP won, and they have enough seats to do whatever they like. 2/3 parliament were their side. And another example, they try to avoid reporting which cabinet doesn't like, is at the end of last year, Mr. Trump came to Japan. And the reaction of Japan is quite different from maybe what happened in this country. Yeah, and they were treated like a celebrity, and even Trump's daughter, I don't know why, and she gave a speech, and the Japanese mainstream media reported, Miss Trump, Ivanka, this speech. Yeah? This is Mainichi Shimbun, which is sort of liberal type, but even Mainichi was showing this. Then same event was reported by Guardian like this. Can you see? 2/3 of the room is completely empty, and it said empty seats greeting Ivanka. So this is a reality, but the Japanese media never talk about those things because it's embarrassed cabinet. And the other thing is, I already mentioned that Morita, Prime Minister's friend, got very big discount to buy landing to the state land to build school. And last 1 month, it's been quite active, reported. But NHK, the top of NHK was saying, don't report it as a top news. Don't talk this issue more than 2 minutes. So this kind of message coming from the top of the media. And the other issue is a new issue. This is yesterday's BBC. I find this is a very good report. If you haven't seen it, please go to the BBC World, Asia. You can see this. I think it's still on the website. Have you ever seen her face? Yeah, Miss Shiorito. She has been, what happened was she is a freelance journalist. And when she was doing internship, she had a dinner or drink with a very high level of a journalist, top bureau of Washington Bureau of TBS. And apparently, he put the rape drug to her drink. And she lost anything, like memory was lost. And when she woke up, she was raped. Then she had to face lots of difficulty, but she didn't want to just hide everything, so she published a book and to fight for the sexual harassment victim, that was a rape victim, and what happened was that rapist was nearly arrested because there was enough evidence. She was dragged to the hotel, CCTV was catching everything, but top of the police stopped arresting him because that journalist is very close to Prime Minister Abe, and he was nearly publishing the book about Prime Minister Abe, and just before another election. So probably they didn't want to have any problem. Then, so now she's fighting for this justice system as well. And I had an honor to get to know her because she has been working with BBC as a part-time, and she just finished her first work with her. And she sometimes come to London, so we communicate quite a lot. And now she's very leading person of the Me Too campaign in Japan. Then recently, this guy is quite, maybe you have seen this, he's a top of the Bureau of Ministry of Finance. And female journalist was harassed quite heavily. She recorded what he was saying, and it was revealed. So, from this incident, we discovered a lot about the problem. Mentality of the media and even politicians, and man dominate the society, because this female journalist was used by male colleague go to get information using your, used as a honey trap. So she had to say. So those things happening one after another. So maybe we can discuss later what's happening in this country, because I'm going to Japan. They really want to learn what UK is doing to protect those people. By the way, I'm organizing study group with students in UK every 3-4 months, and Miss Shiori was also part of it. So if you are interested, please join us. Also, this study group is in Japanese, but it's quite actively we discuss. And next study group is 30th of June, and we talk about media actually. Miss Mochizuki, who is the Tokyo Shimbun's very leading liberal journalist, she accepted to talk to us by Skype. And other issue, the new issue is, I mentioned that the Broadcasting Act, which was abused by a communication minister, they can remove the license if the fairness was not followed. But Prime Minister is trying to remove that political fairness clause in the broadcasting law. That is not because to protect independence of media, but because he found, I can have more Fox News. Because he was invited to talk in the internet media, and he found, I can talk anything. So, and the internet doesn't have any regulation by the broadcasting law. So then he said, we should abolish this clause. But however, United Nations was saying, Japan has devised Broadcasting Act to make media more independent, because there is no independent regulatory body like you have in the Ofcom here. So, but that recommendation, Japan didn't accept. They just rejected. Last November, Human Rights Council had a review of human rights of Japan, which is called Universal Periodic Review. William just mentioned that. That goes variety of Japan human rights, and all states are reviewed by all member countries. And 4 countries gave recommendation about the independence of media, and they were saying you should change this law, because now government has huge power. They even can remove the license of the TV if they find its TV is not fair. So you have to change, and then you have to change this Kisha Club system. But those recommendations, which is really making sense, was rejected by government, but Prime Minister Abe just wanted to change for his benefit. So, and media people are very upset, and they are just fighting now. See what happened, but that is the situation now. And finally, I want to go constitutional revision issue. As you may know, we have Article 9, which prohibits defense forces to attack. They are just allowed to defend. And this is very important for Japanese people's identity. Japan never joined war. But the current regime is trying to change it. And when they talk about constitutional revision, people just talk about Article 9, which I just explained. But 2012, LDP, leading party, published draft constitution. And if you unpack it, it's really, really scary. Not only Article 9. So I want to introduce just 2 or 3. And I think you got the paper. I asked the people, BBC, with familiar music. And Article 21, this is the present constitution. Freedom of assembly and association, as well as speech, press, and all other forms of expression are guaranteed, full stop. This is very strong, and this is current present constitution. However, LDP added paragraph 2. Notwithstanding paragraph 1, activities intended to harm the public interest, which is very convenient words, public interest and the public order, and the association for which purpose shall not be public order. Sorry, I probably missed it. But which shall public order and the association for such purpose shall not be permitted. So anyway, this those, if they think the public orders will be harmed, any activity will be prohibited. Who decide how was public interest, public order. It's very convenient for the authority. So that's why Mr. K says Japan should be proud of present constitution for Article 21 and should not make any change of present 21. Such an vague and wide restriction of this draft contradicts Japan's human rights obligation under international human rights law. So this is, he is very accurate to saying that. So anyway, so that is one concern. The another article is Prohibition of Torture, Article 36. The present Article 36 saying torture is absolutely forbidden. Absolutely is quite important term. However, that term is removed in the current LDB draft. Absolute prohibition is customary international law. So after this Convention Against Torture went into force, all government, all states should follow Prohibition Against Torture. So, and then Japan is a member of this convention as well. So it's quite dangerous. And removing higher protection is going backward. And the fundamental human rights clause is deleted. The other problem is the draft constitution adds totally new clause, which is state emergency clause, 98-99. And please have a look on your time. I gave you all the clause. But anyway, this one, I had a chance a couple of weeks ago, gave talk to the Germany congregation near the Frankfurt. And they were really shocked. And one of the professor, this news photo station interviewed is an expert of the Weimar Constitution. And when he saw that this clause, state of emergency clause, he immediately said, this is very close to the enabling clause, which was abused by Nazis. That clause can stop the function of the parliament, and the cabinet can do anything. So, and that is included in the current draft constitution. So, and another thing is, this is a demonstration in front of the parliament in Japan. You see lots of police. They are not there to protect the people who are protesting. They come to disturb. Yeah, I had a lot of problem. They blocked the exit of the subway station. They just shout by the big megaphone, and those kind of things happening. And and recently Tokyo Metropolitan Assembly passed a law which make them easier to restrict. So yeah, and then I just want to show this terrible thing happen again and again and again. And then one thing I just want to raise awareness is, who are the main MPs? Japanese MPs are like that. He is a prime minister. He is a deputy prime minister. Why? I never seen this in this country. They're actively debating, right? But and the one thing is, to be a candidate of a national election, same as this country, they have to pay, candidates have to pay, but the deposit is so high. Yes, 46,000 euro. So who can be a candidate? Only rich people, or only the son or daughter of the current politician who was enough supporter. So, it's not democratic at all. And this system has been prolonging, and now I'm trying to raise awareness in the UN. But this is one of the things. And the MPs are very well paid. So it's not, it's a double of the MP of this country. So how come they can think the politics in our point of view. So that's another thing I've been stressed. And finally, I just want to talk about your media. I've been impressed by the media of this country compared to my countries. But however, when it comes to Japan, this is Guardian of last year, South Korea, North Korea, and Japan. South Korea issue, Guardian sometimes they put a video of issue, the bottom of the page. And that time, in Korea, they did a huge protest, as you probably remember, candle protest. And they changed the regime, they did good job. And in North Korea, do you remember the relative of Kim Jong-il was assassinated? So this very serious issue. Then Japan, this bold people's wrestling. So why they chose this to talk about Japan? No, that time we had a lot of problems because I had to struggle with. I was struggling with anti-conspiracy bill, but just pick up this, and this is not only time. I often see this kind of contrast. BBC as well. BBC, of course, they talk about China, very serious issue, human rights issue, North Korea, very serious issue, but Japan, ninja, or Kit Kat, or like cosmetic surgery. Why? So I really won't ask, if you are a journalist of this country, I won't ask why do you make this kind of thing. Of course, Japan is maybe, they want to have the impression that Japan is an exotic, nice country to visit for holiday. Yeah, that's true. But we have a lot of problems as well. For instance, yes, Japan is going to have Tokyo Olympic, but what happened? In Fukushima, there are lots of contaminated, and they try to remove the contaminated soil because they want they are forcing people to go back to live there. Then what happened? These lots of contaminated soil. Can you believe this? They are trying to recycle this contaminated soil in many, many places in Japan as a park or agricultural land. That was decided. So entire Japan will be contaminated evenly. So that is an issue, which is quite worrying. So, and then Japan is hosting Tokyo Olympic. So these kinds of things should be more debated and discussed internationally, I think. Anyway, thank you very much.